Hi. Hello. I'm good, Bhupender. Vivan, my most active student, is there. Good evening, Vivan. Thank you. I'm waiting for more students to come so that I can start the session. Why we are here? Okay, I am going to take test of you people on the topic of literary criticism and theory. So that's why I conducted this session, Bhupender. Am I clearly audible to all of you? Please text me and let me know. Am I clearly audible? Or should I use the earphones? Can anyone please tell, am I clearly audible? Thank you. I'll wait for 1 or 2 minutes, then I'll start my session, okay? Thank you, thank you. Are you all prepared? Have you even read it? No, it's not a public library, it's a library of my own. These are all my books. I asked you something. Are you all prepared? Have you even read it? मैम सितंबर में एग्ज़ाम हो गया. आई एम श्योर होगा एग्ज़ाम बिकॉज नीट और जेई सबका एग्ज़ाम हो रहा है. दे डिडंट लीव एनीबडी. एंड डोंट थिंक एडमिट कार्ड नहीं आए हैं तो दे आर नॉट गोना स्टार्ट दे आर नॉट गोना कंडक्ट एनी एग्ज़ाम. दे विल. थैंक यू शिरले. हेलो राजा किंग. Critique Ravi, I know. Very good, Ravi. I hope you answer all of my questions. एग्ज़ाम होगा विवान. लोग यूट्यूब पे क्या वीडियो बना रहे हैं कि एग्ज़ाम नहीं होने वाला है या पोस्टपोन हो सकता है. प्लीज़ गेट योर सेल्फ फुली प्रिपेयर्ड. डोंट लिसन टू एनी बडी. एग्ज़ाम कभी भी करा सकते हैं. Shall I start my session? Type yes please if you all are ready. Will shine soon. Yes, I am there on YouTube. Kush Grammar YouTube. Okay. So I'm starting my session. Okay. So the first question is, who gave this definition of poetry, that poetry is the oldest of all branches. It is superior to philosophy by its charm, to history by its universality, to science by its moral end, and to law by its encouragement of human goodness. So who gave this definition of poetry? Can anybody tell? You have 15 seconds for that. Please answer. Hello, can anybody please answer this? Should I repeat the definition? No, not Aristotle. Not Plato. I'll see who gives the correct answer. Not Coleridge. Repeat the question. Okay, not Wordsworth. Poetry is the oldest of all branches. It is superior to philosophy by its charm, to history by its universality, to science by its moral end, and to law by its encouragement of human goodness. So who gave this definition of poetry? Not Johnson, not Eliot. Shall I give you the answer now? Time's up. No. It was Sydney. Okay. The next question is, it is the easiest definition. Poetry is the breadth and the finer spirit of all the knowledge. Who gave this definition? This is a previous year question, yaar. Please answer. You must have covered all the previous year questions, right? Poetry is the breadth and finer spirit of all the knowledge. Who gave this definition of poetry? Please tell. It has been asked once in net. Can anybody tell? Is there anyone who can give the right answer? Actually, I am pursuing masters currently. Not Sydney. Not Dante. Not Wordsworth. Prasanjeet gave the right answer, same as Akshay Sharma. Very good. Okay. Hello, Shankar. Should I move further to the next question? No, it was not Shelley Wasim. It was William Wordsworth. Prasanjeet and Akshay Sharma gave the right answer. Okay, the next question is, what is Socratic method? It will be the long answer, but at least you can type 2 or 3 lines. What is Socratic method? Can anybody tell? I asked what is Socratic method. What debate, Akshay Sharma? I didn't get you. It is an answer of 2 or 3 lines. It is a dialogue based on individual. No, Vivan. It's a form of cooperative argument dialogue between individuals based on asking and answering questions to stimulate critical thinking and to draw out ideas from the mind. Very good critique, Ravi. You gave the right answer, but it's not a proper answer. It's 90% correct. Very good, Ravi. Ma'am, please repeat the question. Okay, I asked what is Socratic method? How would you define Socratic method? What strategy he used to do? It may be under 5 hypothesis. No. If nobody knows the answer, please can you scroll down chat and read the answer given by Ravi. He gave the right answer. If you want me to explain, even I can explain to you in a simple language. Yeah, you are right, Akshay, to some point, but it is not the proper answer I am expecting. Read the answer given by Ravi. Is there anyone who wants me to explain this question? If you are hearing it for the first time and you are not aware of what exactly Socratic method is, it is form of cooperative argument dialogue between individuals based on asking and answering questions. Yeah, yes, Haripriya, you are right. Yes, Shrille, you're also right. Okay, let me explain. Socrates was a philosopher, right? So what Socrates used to do is he used to engage his fellow mates in a series of questions where he used to ask something indirectly, and he was expecting that the other person will himself or herself will give the right answer to him. Okay, like if I am talking to a guy of an orthodox mentality, okay, so what would I do? I won't directly ask him that no, you are wrong, no, you are right, but I would gain knowledge what exactly he thinks. And if I want him to believe what I want him to believe, like if I am a feminist, I believe in equality. If I want the other person to get agree with me, so what would I do? I would ask him, okay, what do you think about women? I will ask him this way, okay, and how do you find women? What do you find impressive in that? मतलब मैं उनसे क्वेश्चन करूँगी so that आंसर वो मुझे खुद दे, और जो ट्रुथ की तरफ ले जाने वाली चीज़ है वो खुद बोले. अगर मैं डायरेक्टली किसी को बोलूँगी कि नहीं यू आर रॉन्ग एंड आई एम राइट, सो द अदर पर्सन वॉन्ट अंडरस्टैंड माई पॉइंट. ओके, मैं उसी से क्वेश्चन करूँगी और वही मुझे आंसर देगा, राइट. इस तरह से सॉक्रेटिक मेथड ये यूज़ करता था सॉक्रेटिस, ताकि वो अपनी जो सोसाइटी वाले लोग हैं उनको सच की तरफ ले जाए. बहुत सिंपल लैंग्वेज में बताया मैंने एग्जांपल देके. अगर मैं किसी ऑर्थोडॉक्स मेंटेलिटी वाले इंसान से बात कर रही हूँ, मैं डायरेक्टली उसको नहीं बोल सकती कि आप गलत हो. मैं उससे ऐसे क्वेश्चंस करूँगी और वो मुझसे ऐसे बात करेगा ताकि मैं उसको सच की तरफ ले जाऊँ. Okay, so this was the method that has been used by Socrates. Okay, so the next question is, what is anagnorisis used by Aristotle in his work? Please use English only. Okay, Dharshini, I will. I'm sorry because there are many people who would be able to easily understand in Hindi, so that's why I explained that in Hindi. Okay, I will use English only. Sure, I will. Has anybody understood my point? Okay, Haripriya, I will. Okay. Okay, what are the 5 principal sources of sublime by explained by Longinus? What are those 5 sources of sublime that has been given or explained by Longinus? Vivan, what is this answer? Okay. Yeah, this is the right answer, Vivan. Very good. The answer for that was recognition, basically. If you have read the Oedipus Rex, so you know when he got to know about the true reality of his parents, he didn't know that he was going to kill his real father and he was going to marry his real mother. So grandeur of thoughts, ये प्रसन्नजीत बाकी. There are 5 points, 5 sources that he explained. What are others? Certain figures of thought, speech, knowledge. Very good, Ravi. I can see you are fully prepared. If others do not know the answer of these questions, please mention. I am repeating it myself. Grandeur thought, strong emotions, the use of figure, noble diction, yes, dignified composition. Yes, Wasim gave the right answer in a proper manner. Very good, Wasim. Should I move to the next question? Who has written the work Institutio Oratorio? Who has written this work? This has been asked once in UGC Net, so you must know the answer. The work is Institutio Oratorio. Who has written this work? Does anybody know? I'm sure people are just being honest with me. Nobody is googling anything. Nobody is surfing on internet right now. I can at least expect that honesty from your side. Exams are seriously over on your head. You should start studying. Discovery that reduces a change from ignorance to knowledge. Yes, Arunodaya Pablu, yeah, you gave the right answer. Can anybody tell who wrote Institutio Oratorio? This question has been asked once in net. Should I move further if you don't know the answer? Marcus, no Ravi. Yes, Marcus. Marcus was his first name, but he is popularly known as Quentin. No, Haripriya, Joyride is not the right answer. Yes, Marcus. Marcus Quentin. Very good, Vivan, Ravi. Okay, who coined the term purple patch? Very good, Shirley. Who used the term purple patch? Does anybody know? Who used the term purple patch for the first time? Yes, Vivan. Very good, Ravi. Sorry, Vashim. Maybe Alison. No, I didn't expect this from you. It is the easiest question that I've asked. Horace, yeah. Horace is the right answer. Okay, who says this? Next question, I'm asking the next question, okay? Who says this line about Chaucer that Chaucer is a rough diamond and must first be polished before he shines? Yes, Prasenjit, it was Horace who used the term purple patch for the first time in his works. Please answer my next question. Who says this thing about Chaucer that Chaucer is a rough diamond and must first be polished before he shines? I won't tell the answer right now. Keep on answering. Yes, it was Dryden who says that Chaucer is a rough diamond and must first be polished before he shines. Okay, please remember this. It has also been asked once in net. So I'm asking most of those questions which has already been asked in net. Yes, it was Dryden. Not Samuel Johnson, Anita, Alexander. Yes, Haripriya, it was Dryden. Okay, there is a definition that I am repeating and you need to answer me that. When a man is capable of being in uncertainties, doubts and mysteries without any irritable reaching after facts and reasons. This is a definition of. Shall I repeat the definition? Shall I repeat the definition? Please give me the answer. When a man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, and doubts without any irritable reaching after facts and reasons. Who gave this definition? Sorry, what is this definition, not who gave it? Please repeat it, ma'am. Okay. When a man is capable of being in uncertainties, mysteries, and doubts without any irritable reaching after facts and reasons. Yes, Bashim, you gave the right answer. Negative capability, given by Keats. It has also been asked in NET. Who will tell what is negative capability? Can anybody answer in simple language? If there is any other person who doesn't know what exactly is negative capability, so that they also can know. Can anybody please explain what is negative capability? This was the formal definition that I explained, okay? You need to answer me in simple language. Who can explain what is negative capability? Okay, I will, Arundhya. I will explain, but let the other student answer first, then I'll explain. What is this happening this time? Sorry for the sound. Can anybody please explain what is negative capability in simple language? Or should I start explaining? Should I start explaining? Hi, ABC. I don't know what is your name. Vision of artistic beauty even when it leads them into intellectual confusion and uncertainty. No, Vashim, this is not the right explanation. Negative capability was first used by Roman poet Keats in 1950s. You are somehow right, Vivan, but it is not the exact explanation. It is not the right explanation. The writer's ability to accept uncertainties, mysteries, doubt without interpretation. You just gave the proper definition that I just gave you, Ranjit. I didn't ask you this. I want you to explain negative capability in simple language so that even other students can understand. Do you want me to explain in simple language? Okay, I am explaining. There is no point to wait or waste time anymore. Okay, negative capability is something when a writer is trying to negate his own identity from his work. Okay, like if a person is writing something, so he will try that he won't include any of the thing in his work that would explain his own personal identity, that would reflect his own personal identity in his work. Okay, so the best example of negative capability is Shakespeare. You know, whenever you read any of his work, whenever you read any of the work written by Shakespeare, you won't ever guess that what exactly Shakespeare's life was when he was writing that time. You must have read most of his tragedy, most of his works. So you, have you ever found anything, any personal details or any personal biography which would you to lead that okay, Shakespeare was like this and it was Shakespeare's personal life. So Shakespeare was writing in that way so that nobody else can understand or nobody else can know what exactly his own identity was. Okay. And if you see that in opposition of negative capability, you see the Wordsworth. Okay. Wordsworth usually used to write about his own self. If you let's take his poem I Wander Lonely as a Cloud. It was written by William Wordsworth. So he was writing that I wander lonely as a cloud. So what would you understand, that it was Wordsworth himself who was writing his own biography and who was writing his own experiences in his work. Okay. So these are two best examples of like negative capability. Wordsworth was not the example of negative capability, but you can understand the point that Wordsworth was opposite to the negative capability. He never used negative capability in his works. Writers like Shakespeare and even Keats has used this negative capability in his poems. Okay. Have you understood? Similar like theory of impersonality, yes, somehow Wasim. To write something, he block out his emotions, he dies to make his identity. Yes, Saraswati Lakhawat, you are very much right. Thank you, sweetie, for the compliment. Has anybody understood the point? Should I move further? Please type yes if you want me to move further. Okay. So let's move further. There are two works translated by Pope. Pope translated two things, that is Iliad and Homer's Iliad, and what was the other work? Yeah, it was, sorry, he translated Homer's Iliad. Okay. And on his translation there was a critique who said that it was a pretty poem, Mr. Pope, but you must not call it Homer. Pope has translated Homer's Iliad, and there is one critique who said it was pretty poem, Mr. Pope, but you must not call it Homer. So who was that critique? Can anybody please answer? Who was the critique of Pope who said it was a pretty poem, Mr. Pope, but you must not call it Homer? You know, whenever you are preparing for net, you must cover all these minor things as well, because UGC people, they can ask anything from you. If nobody knows the answer, please say that we don't know, so that I can move further and I can answer that question. No, it was not Samuel Johnson. Yeah, Richard Bentley is the right answer. Very good, Wasim. I literally didn't expect this answer from any of you. Sorry for that. Yes, Ravi. No, not Edison. It was Richard Bentley. He heavily criticized Pope, and Pope got so agitated by his criticism that he started writing all the criticism works. Okay. whatever work Pope wrote in his whatever collection he has of criticism, it was just because of this Richard Bentley. He heavily criticized Pope for his translation, and even in Dunciad, he heavily criticized Richard Bentley. You know, Pope was the person who never got criticism in a positive way. He always got so infuriated whenever he gets any criticism from any other person. Not able to recall need option. It's okay, Arundaya. It was Richard Bentley who heavily criticized Pope. Should I move further? Okay, connection problem, ma'am. It was on your part or on my part? Okay, there is a work by Lycidas. Sorry, there is a work Lycidas by Milton. Okay, and there is one critic who heavily criticized this work and said, when there is leisure for fiction, there is little grief. Milton has written this work, Lycidas, and there is one critic who heavily criticized this work, and even Milton. He says, when there is leisure for fiction, there is little grief. Who says this? Who was that critic? Can anyone tell? Shall I repeat the question? Lycidas is a work by Milton, and the work was heavily criticized by some critic who says, when there is a leisure for fiction, there is little grief. Keep on answering, keep on answering. I'm giving you 10 more seconds. Yes. Dr. Johnson is the right answer. Ravi, Wasim, Arundaya, Anita, you all gave the right answers. Ravi and Wasim, I'm heavily impressed by both of you. You are giving all the right answers. Yes, Vivan, it was Samuel Johnson. People who do not know the answer, please at least listen to me very carefully and read all the chats very carefully, so that you can revise all those things. If they ask any of these questions in net, so that you can answer those questions. Should I move further? Okay, there is a work named New Science, titled New Science. So who has written this work, New Science? Who has written the work New Science? It has also been asked once in net. Who has written the work New Science? Nobody is going to Google it, okay? Please be honest. Please answer, I am waiting. If you don't know the answer, please comment. Keep on answering, keep on answering. I'm waiting for 10 or 15 more seconds. No, Carl Zimmer is not the right answer. That I must tell you. Yes, Wasim gave the right answer. It was Giambattista Vico of their name. It was Giambattista Vico. Yes, Ravi. But it was not Carl Zimmer. It was Vico. Yes, Vivan, it was Vico. Yes, Anand. Yes, Vivan. It was Giambattista Vico. It's okay, Savan. You can read the comments and you can know the answer. Should I move further? George Eliot does not necessarily comes under this criticisms work, but she wrote one or two works that comes under this part, and she gave one term which is mind and millinery novels. Okay, so what do you mean by that? Mind and millinery novels. Can anyone please explain what is mind and millinery novels, which was explained by George Eliot? Is there any of you who have heard this term for the first time? Mind and millinery novels. Which are those novels that she refers to as mind and millinery novels? Does anybody know the answer? If you know, please comment, and if you don't know, please say no. It's okay, Anand. Stick to a particular formula. The heroine or female lead was always impossibly beautiful, wealthy, popular. Very good, Vivan. I'm heavily impressed by your answer. Yes, Wasim. No, Haripriya. Please read the answer. Please read the comment made by Vivan. This is the exact answer of mind and millinery novels. In her works, George Eliot was kind of criticizing those women writers who used to portray all those women in a fancy way. You must have read all those novels where you see that most of the women protagonists or the most of the women characters, they were like they were portrayed as so shiny, so beautiful. Their life was so comfort. Their life was full of comfort. And hello, Farhan. Okay, so you see, she was heavily criticizing those women writers who were portraying those women in fancy way. She was in a way saying that it is not always that woman has this much easy life that these women writers are portraying. They should portray all those things, either negative or positive, or their comfort zone or their hard zone. They should portray every detail of a woman. So you see, if you watch any daily soaps, okay, you will see that all those heroines, if they sleep, even if they wake up, they are fully like ready and they always had their makeup on. But you see, their life is not as they were showing us on TV. Okay, so George Eliot was kind of criticizing those women writers who was portraying a false image, not false image, but a fancy image of those women characters. Okay, so it was Mind and Millinery novels, when they portray all those fancy things about women, but not exactly show their harsh reality behind it. You understood the concept? Have you understood the concept? Please type yes fast so that I can move further. Please, 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 fast, type yes, type yes. Haripriya little confused. Okay. Okay, I am repeating. I am repeating in a simple language. Okay. George Eliot was exactly criticizing those women writers who used to fantasize those women in a good manner. Okay, they were not exactly showing the harsh reality of their life. You see, you must have read those novels where women characters has been portrayed in a beautiful manner. If you read Emma, okay, you know the character Emma. Emma has been portrayed in a beautiful way. She was all those fancy looks, and her life was so much comfortable, and they hardly used any harsh reality behind her life. Okay, so George Eliot was exactly criticizing those women writers who were portraying women in a fancy way. They were not showing any harsh reality of them. Okay, they were showing them as like a good wife, a good sister, a good daughter. But they were not portraying any of the problems that has been faced by those women characters. Okay, have you understood it now? Basically, George Eliot wanted them to portray everything, be it a positive aspect or a negative aspect, whatever is related to a woman. She wanted them to portray everything about a woman. You can't just always fancy a woman's life. Okay, there are many hard realities that a woman face, so you need to put forth everything about a woman. She just wanted to convey that. She was criticizing those women writers who were not portraying the harsh reality of a woman. Okay, so there is a term, I'm moving to the next question. Okay, there is a term objective correlative, which is famously used by T.S. Eliot, but this is a term which was first coined by, who was that writer or a poet who, okay, Prasenjit, who coined this term objective correlative, which was heavily used by or famously used by T.S. Eliot. Can anyone please answer who coined the term objective correlative, which was famously used by T.S. Eliot in most of his writings? Most of us think that T.S. Eliot was the one who coined this term, but no, it was not T.S. Eliot. Who was that person who coined the term objective correlative for the first time? Who coined this term? Please answer, please answer. Shakespeare? No. Impressive, Vivan. Yes. Arundaya? Yes. Ravi? Yes, Vivan, you're right. It was Washington Allston who coined the term objective correlative for the first time, who coined this term and who used it for the first time, but it was T.S. Eliot who made this term very popular. And many of us hardly know about Washington Allston. We just know that T.S. Eliot used this term, but it was Washington Allston who coined this term and used this term for the first time. Okay. There is a work that is Milton's God. So who has written this work? It was asked in my MA entrance exam. Okay, nice, very good, Ravi. Who wrote the work Milton's God? Who wrote this work? Can anyone please tell who wrote the work Milton's God? He's the famous person. Please give the right answers, and you all know him. Keep on answering, then later I'll tell. Yeah, you both are right. Being Royal and Arunodaya, you gave the right answer. It was William Empson who wrote this work, Milton's God. Exactly, it was William Empson. Okay, now please tell me that who gave the concept of strong and weak poets? Who was that literary theorist who gave this concept of strong and weak poets? Yes, Miss Anand, William Empson was the right answer for the previous question. But now I've asked another question. Please answer for that. Who gave the concept of strong and weak poets? Please answer fast. Please answer fast. Keep on answering. Please answer fast. Yes, Arundaya, Ravi, Haripriya, Vivan. Yes, you all are right. Or Anand. Harold Bloom was the right answer. He gave this concept of strong and weak poets. And can you tell me what is that definition that he gave of strong and weak poets? What he says about what are weak poets and who are strong poets? What he says about them? Who are strong poets according to him? Can anybody tell? What he meant by strong and weak poets? What he says about them? Who are weak poets and who are strong poets? If you want me to answer, then please comment fast. We don't have much time left. and we can conduct this Instagram session only for 1 hour. They'll cut my video and I'll have to join that again. Please answer fast, please answer fast. If anybody know who are strong poets and weak poets. Shirley Robina, yes, I will explain, but I am waiting for other students to answer if they know. Okay, Harold Bloom says strong poets are those who resist the influence of all those ancient poets. Okay, if I consider myself a weak poet, okay, so what would I do if I read any of Wordsworth's work? If I read any of William Wordsworth poem, so I'll see that he is writing in that manner. He is talking about nature, he is talking about all these things. So I would imitate him. Being a weak poet, I would just imitate him. I will follow all those rules laid by him. I will write in a manner that he has written. Okay, so I will just blindly imitate him. Okay, I won't use any of my own intellect on that. Okay, so those poets, according to Harold Bloom, are weak poets. They don't use their own mind. They just blindly they blindly imitate other poets, and they get like heavily influenced by those other poets. And what are strong poets? If I am a strong poet, then I would use my own mind. Even if I read any poem, okay, but I will just use it. I will read that poem and I will use my own intellect. I will use my own strategy. I will use my own form and create a new poem out of that. I won't blindly imitate that poem. So being a strong poet, I would do that. So this is what Harold Bloom says, that those are weak poets who blindly imitate all those previous poets. Okay, and strong poets are those who use their own intellect and create something new out of that. Have you understood the concept? Have you understood the concept? Should I move further? Please comment fast, please comment fast. We just have 2 minutes left. Okay. Now answer me very fast. There is a work written by Kenneth Brooke. The work is Well Wrought On. So the title is taken from Kenneth Brooke has written this work, Well Wrought On, and the Well Wrought On is the title that has been taken from whose work? Whose writer's work? Please answer fast, please, please, please. Yes, I will record the session, Vivan. The Well Wrought On book has been written by Kenneth Brooks, and the title has been taken from Donne's canonization. Okay, please remind this. Okay, answer the last question. There are just 24 seconds left. Please answer fast. A Renaissance Self-Fashioning is a work written by... They are going to end my video. Please answer fast. Renaissance Self-Fashioning is written by... I'm sorry, the session got ended. They give us only 1 hour. Please join fast so that I can conclude the session. Do you want me to repeat the question? Renaissance self-fashioning is a work written by whom? Who has written this work? Yes, it is Stephen Greenblatt who has written this work, Renaissance self-fashioning. Yes, Vivan, you are right. Yes, Selva Shekhars, you are right. Okay, now the easiest question I'm asking. Who has written Mad Woman in the Attic? Who has written Mad Woman in the Attic? This is the easiest question, please answer. Yes, Nagaraj, but there are two women writers. There were two women writers who wrote this work. Yes, Sandra and Suzanne. Sandra and Suzanne wrote the work Mad Woman in the Attic. And it was the work that later influenced other writers like Jane Eyre and all other women writers. Okay, should I move further? There is one critique that you need to tell me who says that the purpose of literary criticism is to know what is best known and thought in the world. Who is that critique who says that purpose of literary criticism, I quote, is to know what is best known and thought in the world? Who says that? Please answer fast, please answer fast. Not emotional, Vinay. No. It was not I.A. Richards. Please answer. Who is that critique who says that the purpose of literary criticism is to know what is best known and thought in the world? Yes, Nagaraj Surnagi, you gave the right answer. It was Matthew Arnold who says that purpose of literary criticism is to know the best what is known and thought in the world. It has also been asked once in net. Should I ask you more questions? Okay, there. No. Who says it was Lamb? It was Arnold who says that the purpose of literary criticism is to know the best what is known in thought in the world. So there is one more question that has exactly been asked in net. I repeat the question. I just which theorist holds that metaphor and metonym are the two fundamental structures of language? Which theorist holds that metaphor and metonym are the two fundamental structures of language? Baths? No. No. It was not baths. Yes, Arundaya gave the right answer. Nagaraj also gave the right answer. It was Roman Jacobson, who holds that metaphor and metonym are the two fundamental structures of language. It was Raymond Jacobson. Not getting video continuously. Is there any problem on my part? Can anyone please tell, is there any network problem on my part? Okay, Ravi, but even in net you won't find any answer very easy. You won't get all the easy answers. And there are like 70 to 80% questions that I've asked from previous year papers only. Okay, thank you for letting me know. Okay, another, would I say difficult or easy? I don't know. Another question is, there is one work written by a woman writer. I am giving you the like idea of it. There is one work written by a woman writer, that is Maria or the wrongdoings or the wrongs of women. Sorry, Maria or the wrongs of women. Who has written this work? Who is that woman writer who has written this work? Maria or the wrongs of women. I will be appearing for the next year for the first time. But considering all of that, Ravi, you are doing really a great job. It seems like you are fully prepared for this exam. Thank you, Arunodaya. Please answer, who has written this work, Maria or the wrongs of women? Keep on answering. I won't tell you right now. Keep on answering, keep on answering. Thinking about women, madam. Okay. Keep on thinking. You have 10 more seconds. Please answer fast. Okay, done. Haripriya and Saurabh Gupta gave the right answer. It was Mary Wollstonecraft who has written this work, and it has also been asked in net. Yes, Saurabh Gupta. Should I ask more questions or should I end the session? What do you say? Yes, but I am sure, Ravi, you will be able to crack NET exam. If not this time, then definitely next time. You are well prepared. You want more questions? Okay. Let me think. Okay, who has written Dialectics of Sex? You have some questions, Vivan? You want to ask those questions right now? Okay, who has written Dialectics of Sex? It is the difficult question, I know. I am not expecting all of you to answer, even one or two of you to answer. If you don't know the answer, you can say. It is the difficult question, I know. Who has written Dialectics of Sex? And the subtitle for it is the case for feminist revolution. Firestone. Haripriya, really impressive. Yes, Vivan. Yes, Shulamit Firestone is the right answer. Very good, Haripriya and Vivan. Betty Friedan, no, Saurabh Gupta. It's okay, Ravi. People have already given the answer. When will the exam occur? I really don't know about the exams, but it will definitely occur. You must prepare for it. Yes, Nagaraj, it was Shulamit Firestone who has written this work, Dialectics of Sex. Have I asked difficult questions? Do I need to ask some easy questions as well? Do I need to ask some easy questions as well? Okay, I'm asking the easiest one, okay? It's okay, Nagaraj. I am supposed to think about other students as well. Will not be able to grab all those questions. So even they should be comfortable with the session. If I keep on asking all the difficult questions, they would just fed up and they would lose hope for clearing the net this time. Okay, my next question is late capitalism, which is meant accelerated technological development and massive extension of intellectuality, was first popularized by. Okay, forget the definition. Tell me, late capitalism is a term popularized by. Who popularized this term? Late capitalism. Ravi, this is the easiest question. Who popularized the term late capitalism? Can anybody answer? Who popularized the term late capitalism? No. No, not Frederick Jameson. Haripriya is impressing me a lot. She is a brilliant student, I must say that. Yes, it was Ernest Mandel who popularized this term. I won't lie, not easy for me. It is an easy question, Ravi. It was Ernest Mandel who popularized the term late capitalism. Okay? And it has been asked like twice or thrice in NET exam. Welcome, Haripriya. Do you want more questions? Okay, what is interpellation? It is a term mostly used by Louis Althusser. And what did he mean by interpellation? So little confusing. I am asking what is interpellation, which was mostly used by Louis Althusser. I've already given the answer, Selvesh. I am asking what exactly is interpellation. Yes, you are somehow correct, Vivan, but it is not the exact definition. You just talked about it. I want the definition of it. You heard this word for the first time. Okay. But Ravi, I am sure you will be able to learn a lot of things here. If you don't know this answer, I will explain it definitely, but I am waiting for the other students to answer this question. Why, Prasanajit? Why are you so sad? If you're not able to answer, it's okay. Just please read the comments and please listen to me. At least you will be able to get something out of it. Yes, Vivan, you are right this time. Please read the comment made by Vivan. Vivan gave the right explanation of interpellation. Ideology and Ideological State Apparatus. It is a work by Louis Althusser. I asked for the definition. Yes, notion of ideology, somehow you are right, but I wanted the proper definition of it, which Vivan clearly has given. You can read his comment. Should I move to the next question, or you want me to explain it? Yes, you all gave the right answer. So I guess you all know the answer. I should move further, right? Explain, please. Okay, I am explaining. When Britishers came here to rule over us, what they used to do, you know, they always made us believe that this is the culture and you should accept it. They wanted their culture, to propagate among Indians. Okay, they wanted us to adopt their culture, and they were making us believe that this is the culture that you are supposed to accept. And they were, explaining all these positive points, and all these points that would definitely make you understand that okay, this is the thing that we are supposed to explain, and this is the thing that we need to accept. It is for our own benefit. They are kind of like making us inferior in that way. Okay, this is what Britishers has always been doing. They were just interpolating us. They were making us believe that our culture is the inferior one and their culture is the superior one. Okay, they were making us believe that we should follow them, we should follow their culture because their culture is superior. Have you understood the point, or should I explain it further? If in simple language I explain that in order to make someone inferior, you will make yourself superior. Okay, if I admire myself, if I say any of those admirable things about me, that I am this, I am that, I am this, I am that, what it means by this? I am making you feel inferior. Okay, if like I have 4 students, and if I give compliment to a single student, I am making him feel superior. But what does that mean? I am making other feel inferior. This is what Britishers has been doing with us. Okay, in order to make us feel inferior, that your culture is not so good, your culture is inferior, they were making themselves superior, that their culture is acceptable and it is Indian culture that we need to reject. It is not a good culture at all. Okay, this is interpolation. Okay, I guess I should end this session. Is there negative capability in the works of Sylvia Plath? No, you can't say that, Vivan, because Sylvia Plath has always been writing about all her depression and all those things, and even she was using even she was writing her own autobiography as well, where she was explaining all those hurdles that she has faced. So I don't think so that Sylvia Plath has written any of the work which can be considered as the work of negative capability. Should I end the session, or you want more questions? Please let me know. I guess I should end the session now. Most of you must have got tired. It's been, I guess, 1.5 hours. Yeah, I should end the session now. So it was Great having all of you here. Thank you so much for joining this session. And I must appreciate all of you who have answered the questions and who have not answered the questions. I am sure all of you who have not been able to answer all those questions, you must have learned something here. Rabil, I'll conduct the next session soon. Yeah, sweetie, I'll conduct that again soon, very soon. I hope you enjoyed it, right? It was not boring at all. Was it good? I'll conduct more sessions like this. So now I am concluding here. I am just... Hello? Okay, now I'm concluding this session. No more questions for today. So bye, take care. I'll meet you in the next session. Bye bye till then. Stay in touch, stay in tune. And any of you, if you ever get any problem in anything, you can always DM me. Please never hesitate. Okay? You can always DM me if any problem occurs to you. If you find problem in any topic or anything, if you want any guidance, you can always DM me. Okay? Never hesitate. So bye, I'll conclude my session here. I'll just end up this session. Bye now, take care. I'll see you in my next session. Bye.